News First Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.
And a splendid morning to you. This is Newsline, live as always from the News First studios in Dorset Street in Colombo and broadcasting on TV1, which of course is a proud member of the Capital Marriage Group. And thank God it's Friday. It's a splendid day, and it's more than splendid because tomorrow we get a chance to vote. And we hope that we will all use our vote wisely, because that's the only thing we've got really of any real value. And one must really vote against corruption, because a vote, if you don't vote, not voting is possibly a vote for corruption. So if you don't vote, it's actually a vote. So use your vote wisely. Do turn up and exercise your vote wisely. A vote against corruption, that seems to be the theme almost all over the world. And because it's election time, we are really precluded from commenting about local politics and so on. So I'm joined by somebody here, a friend and colleague, who will help us to discuss matters international. The one and only Bandula Jayasekera. Good morning, Bandula.
Good morning. But why do you always thank God and say thank God it's Friday?
Because, you know, that's the only thing left, Bandula. That's
thank God.
Thing. Yes, because now we've got to put our faith in God. Now again, we're verging on annoying Mr. Deshipriya, so we must leave him alone. Don't give him extra work. He's a jolly good fellow he is, isn't he? Our elections commissioner. Anyway, Bandula, this business about corruption internationally, it seems to be a problem. It's not just in Sri Lanka. And our little neighbours next door to us in the Maldives, they're going through an awful lot of trouble, aren't they? And in terms of corruption, I came across this story. Global investigators are claiming that up to $1 billion US, with a B, billion US dollars, has entered the personal bank accounts of the Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak. And much of this money has come through a sort of state investment fund called 1MDB. And the reverberations of those allegations and so on, are enormous, because Malaysia is a key partner, a US ally in this part of the world. Have you followed that?
No, not really, but I wonder why. I mean, I think, like you said, corruption is everywhere.
Yeah.
But why is it's trouble in South Asia, Asian countries? Why is all that? It's happening everywhere.
It is happening everywhere.
But there is no think tanks or observation groups to, talk about other things.
That's right. Because, you see, corruption is an indication that things have gone wrong, that the due process has been somehow circumvented. Even in mature economies and democracies, like, say, in Britain, we had, if you recall, some time ago, long time ago, we had cash for questions. And that brought down the Conservative government led by John Major, when the billionaire Egyptian businessman Mohammed Al-Fayed, he said that he said this under oath in a court. He said that he had paid through a political lobby firm, that he had paid members of parliament to ask questions that would help him in his business and so on, in his area. And that was an astonishing revelation at the time, and coupled with various other allegations of sleaze and further corruption.
But still, I mean, those countries, things happens.
They happen, and that's the point.
Yeah, accountability, they got responsibility, so things move on.
That's right.
So take day-to-day lives.
Indeed.
People, don't suffer. They get to their places on time.
That's right.
I mean, there is not much of harassment. They move about.
And then more recently, we had the expenses scandal. in which British members of Parliament were accused of fiddling their expenses. In short, trying to be inventive with their claims. And they got caught out. But the point is that there was immediate action, like you said, and Britain has moved on. But they've not just swept it under the carpet and moved on. They've made conscious decisions and changes that will ensure that these things don't happen again.
And they're scared of the public, they're scared of their voters, so there is other and they'll be like outvoted. So
that's right. They're very, very concerned about that aspect of it, that the people have the vote and they will exercise it very soon rather than later. And so there is a genuine fear and an understanding at the back of their minds that they must act with full probity and integrity.
And also for us, that's why these countries are doing well.
Absolutely.
And you have like people wanting to go to those countries,
yes,
rather than coming to our countries.
That's right, because I was seated next to this person from Finland recently, and this lady, she's in her early 80s, and she said that sometimes she does wonder why everybody in Sri Lanka wants to go over there, and she's been coming here for the last 25-30 years, every year. Sometimes when her husband was alive, she said about 2-3 times a year. And they are, of course, they're involved in helping the underprivileged with education. So they pay, some of the people that they help have now gone on to some, I think she said 1 or 2 become doctors, accountants, and so, you know, it's the whole shebang, right through to university, if the need was there. So she said that it was very, she was rather surprised and couldn't get her head round. But of course, Bandula, sometimes, you know, if you go to any of these hotels or anything here and you talk to the staff and say, well, what are you doing? Well, so we're working here, but we really want to go abroad. But I did the sums, Bandula. When our hotel industry is doing well, there really is no point in these young people going abroad, because they can earn net as much here when you take the service charge and so on. But they want to go, I think it's called the travel bug, because they do want to know what's going on a little bit outside of our waters. And so perhaps that's the reason that...
And they also do well. Now, you talk of Maldives. Now, see, most of the Sri Lankans are working in those resorts.
That's
and
right.
they're doing very well.
Indeed. And yesterday, the former President Nasheed was on our program, and he said that about 20% of that economy is run and owned by Sri Lankans. So that's a lot of lolly, isn't it, for corporates to go out there. And there's a lot of work going on there. There are offices that are based here, but whose business is out in the Maldives.
Maldives and the resorts, some of our corporates own resorts.
That's right. So it all helps this economy to turn. But sometimes I do wish, because the other day I had a look, Bandula, and discovered that the Maldives per capita GDP was way, way higher than Sri Lanka. And that made me sad.
And of course, if you look at the currency, I mean, it's stronger.
Right. It is. And you have so many Maldivians who come to our country. They live here, they go to school here. I think President Nasheed speaks some Sinhalese as well.
And former President Guy might even to St. Joseph's.
There you are.
Yeah.
You see, so we have close links to them. And he also said that he's hoping that after these things, elections, he hoped that the Sri Lankan government will have a bit more time on their hands to have a look at what's happening to his nation. So very, very. You're a former diplomat, but what kind of a difference can these discussions make? Does it actually result in something?
I mean, you should have the will for us to, and go with an open mind and to have these discussions.
Right.
I think that's very important. I mean, I don't believe in wars. I think discussions are the best thing. But somebody, both parties should be able to listen or willing to listen.
Right.
I think that's what is
and
the UN is for.
Yes, and then what about the role of sort of intermediaries. We had that here in this country, didn't we? We had, what was it, the Norwegians and so on. Do they really make a positive contribution?
Yeah, if they have an open mind, they can. I think. It has worked worldwide, I think.
Right. Now then, we will just go on a little bit about Maldives. The problem in the Maldives is absolutely astonishing, where the president has sacked in as much as 3 days, replaced the police chief twice. Apparently the first one didn't answer his phone and was uncontactable, and under their constitution, under the rules, if they're not contactable, they can be removed. So the president's exercised that right. But then, so the same fate happened to the next guy. And they've now arrested one of the Supreme Court judges who had delivered the verdict saying that the trial against 12 politicians obviously from the opposition party and President Nasheed was thrown out. You know, that trial was, and they did say, have another trial. They did say that as well, but they released these people. But then the President Yamin surrounded the parliament and didn't let people go in. And before that, he's also changed the Auditor General, but that poor chap decided to do a report on corruption, and he got changed for his efforts. So corruption is driving, politics is driving corruption, and corruption is driving politics. Very, very sad situation, obviously, in Maldives, because there are thousands and thousands of tourists who come out there to enjoy and savor these beautiful islands, which incidentally are supposed to be sinking.
Yeah, but sometimes even though we had trouble for 30 years, tourists came. There were no issues except I think that there was a American couple who was taken or arrested or hostage by the LTT, but they were released some time ago. But
right.
They come because they go to other islands where each island is a resort.
Yeah.
And they continue, they carry on.
Indeed. Do you think those visitors are brave or what?
See, sometimes for us it doesn't affect them. They come for sun, sea and sand, and they continue.
And to be fair, I don't think visitors, foreigners, were affected, like you say, apart from that one couple, important as that was. But
so because they have to have the economy, they have to concentrate on it. These are troubles within.
They must have a dual-track policy.
Yeah, definitely. Now, even though we had all this, I remember even President Premadasa's time, they criticized, but the Gamudavas, everything has to go on.
Indeed.
You have issues. There now sometimes, you remember the journalist, foreign journalists, they used to report Dateline Colombo.
Yeah.
But things happened up north, so that doesn't mean that, didn't mean that the whole country was burning.
Yes, that they just happened to be filing it from the comfort of a hotel in Colombo.
Yeah. And this happens in Mali, but not in those resorts.
Yes, that's right. Oh, good point. Yes, yeah. So we are also talking about, since we are trying our best to be international about this today, it comes to the front pages of most newspapers about Udanga Weeratunga. Well, apart from the Daily News, the Island and the Daily Mirror have lead stories about that. And it now turns out that Udanga Weeratunga is not being detained by Interpol, but these claims are coming from his Facebook. So I don't know whether we're not able to have full details, but there's something that happened. These people were supposed to go, what's today, Friday. I think they were supposed to go there on Wednesday. But they couldn't because there was a mix-up. Yasanta Kodagoda from the Attorney General's Department couldn't get his visa because there was a mismatch between his date of birth on the passport and on the visa application. So it got rejected. and then they had to reapply the next day. So one part went, I think, from Wednesday night. And the thing is, and then the others followed the next day. So this team got split. But the point is here, but if this was in the US or in England, somewhere like that, the police team would have been deployed and decision taken to go, and within hours they would have gone. But over here, you know, these people had to scurry around getting their visas done. It didn't matter that they were police officers and so on. They had to go through the process. But I would have thought, this is not their first time. This is not a criticism, but I would have thought, Bandula, that at the time when they first went, that they ought to have got multiple entry visas.
Definitely, yeah, that's true.
It would have saved money as well. I know I'm always going about money, but it would have saved money. And it would have been more convenient. And surely they would have given senior police officers a multiple visa.
Yeah, that's what these agencies, like you said, for us, they would have worked together. They would have thought like long term, for the future. That's really what they did. And I mean, talking of Udayanga Weeratunga, I think suddenly he's in the news, but I don't think he was a successful ambassador.
Well, he couldn't have been. There's no way that he could have not known about this MiG transaction, because he was the ambassador, for heaven's sake. And well, you know that better than I do. When you sit there in your consular office, you get a lot of correspondence, right?
Yeah.
Briefing notes from Colombo and so on.
Not everything. I mean, not if it was related to that country.
Yeah, if it was relative to that, then you would. What about trade deals? Would that come to you?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, the countries where I served, I mean, it's ridiculous. They used to send people from the trade missions.
Yeah.
There were no business councils.
Right.
Sorry to say, most of these people go and have a good time. They want a big house. This is what they did. So we can do much more with trade. It was.
You mean they were not active enough?
No, they just come, sit, send their children to school, all this, get all the benefits and go off. I mean,
bit waste of money, isn't it?
Yeah, it happens. So there has to be a proper policy. It didn't happen in most of the countries.
But how important is it, Bandula, to have diplomatic representations all over the world?
Yeah, it's important, but we should go on, like you said, economy, trade. But they don't select the right people. Just because somebody is senior, they send them.
Or because somebody.
And also, I think that private sector thinking is very important.
Right.
This is what happens. So they just do, and they still think in a funny way, okay, you have the spices, that's all.
Right.
I don't want to mention the name because we don't support any commercial organization, but a private company, when I was in Australia, their tea, it helped me to break through because they were in 114 countries, not the Sri Lankan.
Right.
See, when you say, okay, they say, oh, this is the brand. Okay. So this is how it worked. Yeah. Whereas the government, I think before all these people are sent, they should be sent to various places and trained.
Now then, obviously people are listening to this program because contrary to some other belief, right? Now then, here you go. This is clarification about Udayanga Weeratunga. Udayanga Weeratunga is under house arrest. He can't leave Dubai under any circumstances. Udayanga doesn't have an official travel document since the government of Sri Lanka has categorically stated that he is travelling with false documents. His interview and Facebook statements are mainly aimed at what is happening locally rather than being based on fact. And we're told that the Minister of Justice, Talata Atakorala, will also be travelling to Dubai to be with the team. There is a bit of diplomatic wrangling going on here. Because
I've never heard the Minister of Justice
taking proactive action like this.
Yeah, but then we don't need such a big team either.
But it perhaps so important, this matter is so important, that they want action. Well, good luck to them when they're out there, and we do hope that, because you are spending our money, the Dubai government isn't hosting you, are they? And we're spending our money, we want to see results. It's a bit like our finance department, isn't it, here? If they're paying for you, they expect you to jolly well go and do your job. not come back with a blank screen.
Yeah, but I still have my views, like you don't need such a big team.
Yeah.
You don't need politicians going. You have the police officers, the AG's department, few of them.
Yeah.
So everything, like seminars and all that, are people, I mean, we are not talking of elections here, but the system, they send huge delegations. I don't think that's necessary.
Was it necessary? No, I don't know whether you should be kissing and telling, but let me ask you anyway. Do you remember when President Rajapaksa was first elected? I recall a huge entourage going to China. Do you think that was required?
See, but overall, I'll tell you,
Yeah.
any leader, we should not have huge delegations.
Right.
I mean, lots of people, okay, you come. That's the way. It happens every time. You don't need those huge delegations.
I remember being in London when President Rajapaksa came there to address some, that Oxford Union thing that went wrong. Well, do you know, several hotels in London were booked to accommodate his very large entourage. Bandula, quite frankly, it was sickening because, do you know, these rooms are like over 150, 175 pounds a night, right? And that's just bed and breakfast. And you're talking about 30 pounds a pop if you have a meal there. And it seemed to be such a waste.
I think there has to be proper systems, proper guidelines for this. So this is what they do. I think we became a joke.
Then we had that minister, something in Washington. He got the embassy to pay for the cake and that party. I seem to remember a figure of $46,000 US.
And most of them...
Was it ever paid back?
I really don't know. I think that time the embassy said they didn't pay.
Right.
But still, if you look at the other thing, Faraz, I think I've mentioned this before, most of these people, the politicians, see, they will say if their son is, most of their children are like studying abroad, they graduate, so they make it a point to make it official visit and go there. That's our money. I've seen these people in action.
You're absolutely right. I too have had
this is what they do.
Knowledge about that.
So this is more, everybody does it.
Yeah.
But we have to change.
Doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah, it's not right. So we have to, like the accountability is very important. These are things which Auditor General can check.
Do you know, I'd like to suggest something to our ministers and to our state institution heads, that they have, all of them have websites, apart from putting nice photographs and saying, oh, look at my website. Why can't they have live things there? So if the minister's meeting, let's say, a contractor, like some minister did here during the Central Expressway thing, I think they should post it on their thing, that, that they should sort of put it on their computer and say, I'm meeting so-and-so. Open. So that later on...
But there's another thing for us. I want, see, we are talking of international issues.
Yes.
Now see, people tend to blame President Trump, but yesterday I got this
good point.
from one of the former Indian ambassadors, and because he has quoted the Times of India, where he says the US unemployment rate is at an all-time low of around 3.5%.
Right.
Consumer spending has surged. Saving rate has fallen to 2.4% of GDP from 6% due to stock market boom, which can correct itself by 25%, dashing misplaced exuberance. So this is a report.
Indeed.
So why are they saying various things about President Trump? So I mean, it's economics.
It is, isn't it?
You specialize in that, so things, maybe there are other issues, but the economy is doing well.
Well, when unemployment rate is down and retail expenditure is up, that means people got money.
Yeah, so you wonder why. I mean, maybe his systems are, the way he does it may be different. They call him Tweeter-in-Chief because he tweets.
Yeah.
But then he has cut off the red tape. He's reaching out directly. Maybe that.
Indeed, but also I was reading a story this morning about a a person from a Middle Eastern country, I think it was Syria or Jordan, and this chap had spent 39 years in the US, and he was deported. But that was when you see that's the headline. It's almost like the rhetoric of the Kalabala headline. Yeah. After 39 years, so you have the sympathy. But when you read it, this particular case, he's had a whole history of battling the immigration service, and finally they said, no, listen, enough is enough. You've got no right to remain in the US. Even though he was a very, very successful businessman.
And President Trump wanted to make America great again.
Indeed.
That's what he came into power. That's what he was voted, and that's what.
And obviously, the people in America voted for that. They were probably fed up with the various promises that were broken, lots of promises made, and whilst America themselves were not having a good time, I suppose the public resented the vast amounts of monies that was spent internationally.
And also those actors and actresses who are generally supporting the Democratic Party, who said they will leave the US if President Trump is elected, they're still there.
Oh, they're still there?
They haven't left.
They haven't left. See? Perhaps we should write them all emails and ask them where they're leaving, when they're leaving, and invite them here.
Yeah, because see, they want somebody, the Americans, they want their country to do well. I think this is what any leader, any politician, first you should develop that country.
Let's make Sri Lanka great. Just
that's
the way
really what we need.
The way the Americans are making America great again, and the British are trying that.
And he's a businessman. He knows his economics.
Yes, he knows his dollars and cents.
Yeah, so this is what he's trying to do. So I don't know, everywhere people will criticize, but I think that's important. So like those messages, I mean, which I think it's the Times of India also had reported, that's what matters.
And the Saudi king, he's the Crown Prince, who's young and tipped to become the youngest ever Saudi monarch ever since the kingdom came into being. He's launched his own unique way of combating serious financial crimes, and I love the theory. They did the investigation, then they arrested these people, detained them in one of the best hotels there, including the owner of that hotel, and locked them up and took them in one by one and said, look mate, here's your file, this is your fraud, pay so much, or we'll shove you back and you can go back to a proper jail and fight it out there. Apparently 2 or 3 of these businessmen, they were princes as well, were released after they clarified those claims. Some paid up, some negotiations still going on, and the bigger ones are obviously still under discussion. But I love the system, because they did the research first, they did the investigations first, and then said, listen, now here you go, this is it. And so the Crown Prince is really fighting corruption, because he also wants to make Saudi Arabia great. So, like you say, Mr. Trump wants to do that, the Saudi Crown Prince wants to do that,
or the French President,
wants to do that. Theresa May is trying desperately to do that, with Brexit and all that.
It's all about economics finally, because see, even if I don't want to talk much of Sri Lanka, but even if you look at, all these issues are based on economics, you give them livelihood, the graduates should have jobs, all these people, then there won't be any issue. It's like, okay, when our government, we are trying to empower people, that's what is needed for us.
That's right, you need to help people to help themselves. And that's what...
and they won't think of any other issues. If there are things to do, that's, I think, what matters.
Absolutely right. Well, we've been very philosophical this morning, Bandula Jayasekera. I'm glad that you've lasted the 30 minutes. So, thank you very much. And we'll see you again soon, no doubt. We'll be on Talk of the Town shortly, won't we? And that's the way it was from Newsline on the 9th of February 2018. Just ahead of the elections, vote against corruption. Not voting is possibly a vote for corruption. On that note, take care and God bless.
News First Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.